So yes, back to your point, white collar crime can be extremely devastating, and it is definitely more costly than violence or property crime. Because when you think about like what Bernie Madoff did, he made off with upwards of $1 billion. Okay. And you think that the average homicide case costs around $1 million, maybe $2 million. I forget the statistic, but it's like on the low end. So that's 500 murder investigations or 500 murders. When we talk about things like robbery, I'm just kind of remembering the article that I cited for my dissertation. A robbery investigation costs like $15,000. Like, it's not a lot of money when we are looking at something like that. So $15,000 goes into $1 billion how many times? I'm just looking at you guys' faces. Just let's call it this, a shitload. It is a shitload of robbery level investigations. The harm to a robbery is typically on the order of like less than $1,000, because when you think about it, like how much cash do you carry on average? If you got robbed, how quickly could you cancel your cards? Like most people, like the way their robberies work, or 66,000 times. Nice. Like most people, like when they realize that they have lost their cards, or if they've been robbed, they will call the bank and say, hey, I called the police, said I was robbed. You should know this too. So you should probably know that $10,000 charge at the casino probably wasn't me. Okay. So when we look at the actual harms of white collar crime, yes, most definitely, it is more harmful to society, even for things like insurance fraud. Like all of you guys likely have some form of insurance, either renter's insurance or car insurance, something like that. Even health insurance, either you or your parents, okay? And one part of those insurance premiums that you have to pay every month is the fact that people who abuse the system, who commit insurance fraud, yeah, the insurance companies aren't just paying that out of pocket and keeping it cheap for you. No, they're passing those costs directly back to you. It is considered a cost of doing business. So every time someone lies on their taxes or defrauds a car insurance company or something like that, or submits a fraudulent claim, like you're paying for it. So it is harmful to everyone. And the growth of the internet, and in particular things like bots or like little programs that control the internet for various pieces of information, or like the fact that governments and like companies have lost like customer data that includes things like your social security number, your name, your address, security questions, like all that stuff has multiple times that I can remember been leaked to the internet. Like this bridges the gap between cybercrime and white collar crime, because like if someone's personally identifiable information is leaked onto the internet, then what are they going to use that for? Like they're going to use it to commit some type of white collar crime. Organized crime, in contrast to this, are effectively illegal businesses, okay? They are businesses whose primary purpose is to commit an illegal act, okay? Drug cartels are an example of this, or bootlegging operations from Prohibition. Organized crime as we would think about it now, like movie The Godfather, Scarface, Goodfellas, anything else. And one aspect of these types of organizations is that they will often try to gain political influence through bribery, corruption, bid rigging, things like that. So when we examine things like organized crimes, they will often commit things like white collar crime. Like the famous example of Al Capone being caught by the IRS because he wasn't paying income taxes. Like, it is a important aspect of criminology and understanding criminal law, because organized crimes will commit white collar crime. Businesses can be involved in white collar crime. Like 2 years ago, I think it was, what's the bank? I want to say Washington Mutual, or yeah, it was one of the, I mean, it's a fairly large bank. And there was a practice within the bank to overcharge customers, overcharge their account holders, effectively pushing them into like high interest loan accounts and credit card accounts without their consent. And like, this was a major source of revenue within the bank. And it was also highly illegal because these people were not soliciting these credit cards, loan applications, whatever. The bank was just giving it to them and then charging them fees on it. So like, businesses themselves can be organized around a crime, which effectively turns it into an organized crime. Okay. Making sense?
Would it be safe to assume that most white collar crimes are interstate?
That is the assumption made by the law. Okay. So, I mean, I just switched the slide over, and the reason why the federal government has jurisdiction over most white collar crimes is because of the assumption that you're using something that crosses state boundaries. So, banks, the post office, mortgages are all typically regulated by the federal government. So if you break those regulations, you're breaking a federal law. So automatically, the IRS, the Federal Trade Commission, the FBI, they will have jurisdiction over those crimes. Now, if you lie on your local property tax thing, your lien on your house or whatever, but you don't lie anywhere else, that would be a state-only offense. So it would be investigated by the state authorities. But most of the time, if you're lying on your state taxes, you're lying on your federal taxes. So that's where, like when we talked about a few weeks ago, the supremacy clause of the Constitution, where two parts of the law are in conflict, the federal law takes precedence. Okay. So when we look at the potential crimes that someone could commit that falls under, white collar crime. I mean, it's like large scale corporate fraud. Those spam emails that you get, like Nigerian prince scam, that's a classic. Or like the phishing phone calls that everyone gets, which is why no one answers their telephone anymore. Like, all of those things are like white collar crimes, okay? Someone calling you and saying your social security card or social security number has been frozen, you need to call this number to talk to an IRS agent, which will involve you giving them your social, your birthday, whatever. That is them trying to solicit your information for fraud, okay? Something like selling unregistered securities or fraudulent securities, like that would be like selling fake stocks. Like fake Tesla, IBM, not really, Google, Apple, like any of the tech company stocks, like those are intensely regulated. So like, we're going to talk about some specific acts, but bottom line, it's a very, very broad area. Okay. The issue and the key debate within like criminal law about this topic is the fact that most of the time, to prove that it's a criminal act rather than just a civil law violation, is that prosecutors have to show that there was both a knowledge of illegality, a knowledge that this behavior was against the law, and a willingness to commit the crime. Okay. This is why if like you make a mistake on your income tax return and you just fill in a box incorrectly, the IRS is not going to throw you in jail. Okay. You may face like a penalty. You may have to pay back a little bit more money, or you may get a little bit less from the IRS as a consequence. But you're not going to go to jail for like, instead of putting $76, you put $78. Okay. You're not going to go to jail for that. Okay. So at this point, what we've talked about is the idea that individuals can commit white collar crime, but also corporations can do it as well. Okay. So under the common law, under our common definition of what a corporation is, you can't charge an entire corporation with a crime. Okay. What you can do is charge the specific members. Yes, Kaylin, your question about would unregistered securities also include expired extended warranty? Yeah, that is an example of a type of fraud. Now, I've never actually called them back to see what they're asking for. So it could be that they're just soliciting your information for a phishing scam. It could also be that they're trying to sell you a product. So they may ask for your credit card number, your VIN number, and like all the other things that you would expect to give for an extended warranty, and like use that information to sell you something that's effectively worthless. So, yeah.
So the phishing scams are only looking for money, right? And the unregistered securities would be looking for information relating to your well-being, your properties, and whatnot.
Opposite.
Opposite. It's flipped. Okay, so phishing's looking for information, and okay, that makes more sense.
So, like, all the calls that we get are basically from like
These?
Yeah.
Unreal.
So all those spam calls are effectively solicitations for information most of the time. You answer and you give someone personal information. Like it could be something as simple as like name, birthday, home address, like things that we would normally not think of as like personal, like protected information. But all that information is stuff that you would have to ask on a tax form or a loan application. Like if any of you have ever like filled out an application at a bank, like you have to put a bunch of different information, like your employer, who your boss's name is. Trying to think of what else like I had to fill out when I was buying a car, like proof of income, who I bank with, like all information that we would normally say, that's okay. Everyone can kind of know that, but it's also like really important and something that you probably shouldn't just give out to anyone. The unregistered securities would be like loans or stocks or bonds or something like that. Okay. Making sense? Sorry, I need to change my screen over so I can actually see nods. So when it comes down to like organizations as potentially criminally liable, if a member of an organization knows something is a crime, if they don't report it, they can be charged for failure to report, particularly if they have what's called a fiduciary responsibility. What that basically means is they have to act in the customer's best interest and not the bank or the brokerage house or whatever. So if members of a bank know that like they're pushing things that are not in a client's best interest, if they have that fiduciary responsibility, they can like lose their license, they can lose their CPA license, or they can be held criminally liable. Okay. Make sense? we'll skip over the scope of the agent's authority because that's kind of boring. How many of you guys are familiar with what happened with Enron? Kinda? Conrad, a little familiar? Kalen's a little familiar. Anyone else? Okay. So sorry for those of you who may know about this, but like Enron is a great example of a corporation that built itself around the idea that it was going to commit some crime. Okay. So Enron was an energy company, and like through the 90s, 2000, early 2000, 2001, like it was considered like the big company. Like, I don't really know any prominent energy companies, but think of it as kind of like the Tesla without Elon Musk involved. Okay. Just a really big company within the field. And according to like everything it reported publicly and to its shareholders, it looked like a good company. Like it was profitable, had good projections, but things weren't what they appeared to be. So effectively what had happened was the management of Enron kept two separate sets of books. One that made the company look extremely profitable and everything was going great, but then another set of books that actually showed that the company was in serious trouble. Okay. So effectively what happened after that was things started looking hinky to stock analysts and financial analysts and the investors. So they started to investigate and start pulling at the threads. And eventually it got out that the senior management of Enron just lied to everyone. They lied to the shareholders. They lied to the FTC, the FEC. No, they didn't lie to the Federal Election Commission. I apologize. The Energy Department, since they're an energy company, and like all of their employees, like everyone was screwed over effectively. Okay. So when we talk about like white collar crime as a harm, like this harmed like thousands of people worked for Enron. Millions of people like had investments or were involved in like hedge funds or mutual funds, like all like anyone who has a 401k through their work, like it's entirely possible it had Enron, or had you been around to invest in Enron at the time, you would have invested in Enron. Your fund would have invested in Enron and you would have lost money. Okay, so this is a very important idea within corporate crime. It's the idea that we have all these rules for organizations for a reason, because if we don't have them, what's to stop people from lying to their shareholders, their employees, their customers about something, okay? Another example of this would be what's called an antitrust violation, okay? So this goes back to the Gilded Age. If you're familiar with like early or late 19th century, early 20th century American history, or like what Teddy Roosevelt did. Sorry, I have to hit a cat for a second. Don't think you guys want to listen to him chew on a box. So what the Sherman Antitrust Act basically did was it prohibited businesses from cornering markets, okay? And what that means is like something that we have to look at now with like internet companies or cell phone companies, like Comcast or, okay, we got Eagle and we have Nextech out here, right? So if Nextech and Eagle basically said, hey, if Eagle said, I'm going to take everything north of 18th Street and you take everything south of 18th Street. Like if they agreed to do that and just say, we'll sell all of our products here and you guys can sell all your products there and then everyone makes money. Like that's a huge problem, because if the businesses agree on things, they're going to do things like set prices. They'll start jacking up prices. People won't be able to shop around for service. Same with like cell phone companies. Like there are effectively 4 big ones: Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, and what else?
I think one of them got like T-Mobile or somebody got bought up recently.
Yeah, T-Mobile got bought up by AT&T, I think. So we've got really like 3 companies now. Like, so when we talk about corporate crime, like from a business standpoint, it makes sense, because you're basically saying, I'm not going to compete in this market, so I'm going to focus all my energies on this other area. But if 2 businesses collaborate and decide that, okay, you go over here, I'm going to go over here. You take Salina, I'm going to take Hayes. That's going to be bad for customers, okay? So this is something that's really, really big. It's enforced by the Department of Justice. So basically, if the DOJ can see that 2 businesses made an agreement, they can charge both businesses and the relevant people with conspiracy. Okay. Issue with something like this is the fact that businesses are smart. So they're not going to like put it in writing that they're going to only sell in this market or set their prices at this level, especially now. I mean, what they're going to do is say, well, T-Mobile or AT&T charges this for their service. They have this coverage area, this speed, so we're going to match. We're not going to go any lower than what AT&T does. We might change a few things, like offer a little bit better coverage or a little bit better speed or a little bit lower of a price, but we're not going to say, you know what, this is the most efficient we can do it. This is the highest speed possible, and we'll go from there. Making sense?
Does this deal with like monopolies? Like I know Google was in trouble a couple of years ago because they were.
Yeah, this is. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I think like Microsoft or Apple had to pump a bunch of money into another company one time because they were about to be a monopoly.
Yeah, like this was a big thing with like Microsoft in the 90s, because like Apple didn't exist really in the 90s. They had like really a niche market. Every single, like basically every single computer sold in the US had Microsoft software in it. And that basically meant that Microsoft could set prices and just control the entire market. Okay. And like, this is going to be a really relevant thing in the next couple of years. Google, Amazon, Facebook, like most of the tech companies in various form or fashion can be in trouble with antitrust, because they do things like they'll buy up competitors. Like Facebook bought up Instagram and then incorporated a bunch of features. Like who owns Snapchat now? Does anyone?
I think Snapchat's still on its own. I know Snapchat bought Shazam a while ago, that little music identification app. But I don't know if anybody's bought Snapchat yet.
Gil, you should play that video. It's like it's from Parks and Rec. It's hilarious. Like they made like a commercial of like what they think the future is going to look like.
I would like, just to give you guys an aside, like since we're probably going to finish up most of the material today, I will probably just have like Wednesday set aside. Like I'll have the Zoom open and I'll just like be sharing my screen watching dumb videos until someone comes in and bothers me or asks me a question. Not really bothers me, but just like interrupts the funny video thing. All right. So like the recent development within white collar crime is the fact that most white collar crimes at this point require computers. Like very few people do like the classic white collar crime of like check fraud, because no one uses checks anymore, right? So white collar crimes have been like directly incorporated into computer crime, which is why 9 times out of 10, if someone commits another type of fraud or white collar crime or anything like that, they're charged with something like wire fraud, because they used a computer to commit that crime. So if you fraudulently file a mortgage application for a house that doesn't exist, you committed mortgage fraud. But if you do it online, like through a portal or whatever, you're also committing wire fraud, because you're using the internet to do something knowingly with intent to defraud, produce, or traffic in counterfeit device or counterfeit information. Okay, make sense? White collar crime also covers things like stealing passwords and PIN numbers and credit card numbers. Okay. So anytime someone has broken into like your email account or your social media account and like posted something or shared spam or shared viruses or whatever, they committed what's called access device fraud. Okay. That big thing, was it like 6 years ago, where a bunch of celebrities iCloud accounts got hacked and they released all of everyone's pictures? Like, that was a massive amount of access device fraud. Okay. It was also like a bunch of other crimes, but like primarily speaking, it was access device fraud. Making sense? Okay. Identity theft, we've kind of covered this, but this is basically the crime of using someone else's personal information. So you effectively pretend to be a different person to do something else. Okay. This is not you like pretending to be like someone for fun on like a social media account. Like you create a burner Reddit account for like a celebrity and you just shit post or something. Like this is you going through someone's mail, stealing like their birthday card and stuff like that, and trying to break into their bank account or take out credit cards in someone else's name. Make sense? White collar crime also covers things like copyright and patent infringement. So anytime someone's illegally downloaded Game of Thrones or Walking Dead or Watchmen or whatever else people are binge watching now and don't want to pay for HBO, like this is white collar crime. Okay. It is non-violent in nature, but you're still depriving people of income. Okay. Usually speaking, it's treated as a civil offense, meaning if like someone catches you downloading Game of Thrones and like says, okay, well, as punishment, you need to give HBO $100. Like, it's treated as a civil crime. To typically categorize it as a criminal crime, like a crime, not criminal crime, God, need more coffee. To treat it as a crime rather than a civil law violation, typically prosecutors will look for evidence of a conspiracy. Okay, so like either like an industrial operation where you have multiple like you were in charge of multiple computers downloading this thing and then doing something else, or you're selling the illegally pirated information or whatever, or as well as things like industrial espionage, like the Sony hack from a few years ago, where North Korea basically broke into Sony's servers and released a bunch of information. Like that, we would consider an act of cyber terrorism because it was intended to like, cause fear within media companies, basically. But if like instead of it being North Korea, it was like Warner Brothers who did it, like, and just like started undercutting bids or releasing information to like tank pictures or anything like that, like that would be industrial espionage, right? Basically, this slide, the fraud through false statements, basically what it boils down to is you can't lie. Like your freedom of speech is restricted in very specific instances. You can't file a false claim. You can't conceal assets or taking or like make false statements to banking authorities or regulatory authorities. You can't use the mail system or the telecommunication systems to extort or defraud people or anything like that. Okay, basically what it boils down to is if a bank or the government is asking you a question, you can't lie. You can't say I don't own this boat or anything like that in a bankruptcy proceeding. You can't fraudulently file for additional procedures performed in a nursing home if you're a doctor. If you file for it, you have to have done it, okay? You can't mail a bunch of people out fake, I'm trying to think of the example, fake competitions that they won in an effort to get access to their private information. Like you can't do that. Make sense?
Isn't that what Lori Lohan did? Like, I can't, like, I just know the old FBI director did it. What was his name? Comey.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he like prosecuted her, and she like had lied to federal prosecutors. Was that? I don't even know her. Like, is that her name? It was like some actress.
Well, there's Lindsay Lohan and like
Lori Loughlin.
Lori Loughlin.
Yeah, Lori Loughlin. That's what.
Okay, that was very confusing. Okay, sorry. Lori Loughlin is fascinating and hilarious, and there is, I'm sure I've shown it to some of you before, but like the Legal Eagles series on YouTube. Lori Loughlin is a hilarious case. I'm going to share a video with later today on it, since now you mentioned it. But since we only have 6 minutes and it's like a 20-minute video, I don't want to like show it right now. But it's definitely hilarious, and you should definitely watch it. Okay, let's skip over that. Money laundering. This is something that is intermittently in the news, okay? The reason why money laundering is so important, and if you are at all interested in white-collar crime, money laundering is like the serial killer of like white-collar crime, okay? It is the biggest, it's the most fascinating type of crime. What it boils down to is disguising illegal income as legal income, okay? So in like mob movies, or I guess drug-related movies, you'll often say again. Breaking Bad.
Breaking Bad had to go.
So like a big plot point in a lot of those movies is how do you disguise the fact that you've made millions of dollars as a drug dealer so that you can actually do something with that money. Like if you seriously take $500,000 in cash and go to a bank and say, I want to buy this house, that bank is going to keep you in the office and call the FBI and say, hey, this dude seriously brought in 100 pounds worth of cash. Can you come in and please investigate this? Because this is seriously messed up. So money laundering is a very important like type of crime because drug cartels, organized crime, white-collar criminals, they can't do anything with that money unless it looks like it's legitimate, okay? So BuzzFeed, like this week, published a pretty extensive news report, like a news article concerning the fact that like our government does not enforce money laundering laws. Like this is one of the key allegations against President Trump as far as like any crimes he may have committed. Like they are accusing him of acting as a money launderer for Russian oligarchs. Like they pay for condos or rent space within his buildings, and effectively, like, they buy it with illegal money and then they sell it and get legal money. Make sense? So there are particular like rules that banks have to follow called suspicious transaction reports, I think is what they're called. But it's basically like the key thing with the BuzzFeed report is that banks would they would do their due diligence, or I'm sorry, they would do the bare minimum, but they wouldn't like follow up. So they'd report something as suspicious, but then they wouldn't follow up with the investigation. They wouldn't do anything with it. Okay. Basically allowing drug cartels, terrorist networks, people who have been under like sanction, like a lot of Russian oligarchs, the Iranian government, like to launder their money so they can spend it. Okay. So it is a seriously fascinating area, and I highly encourage you guys to take a look. Something else that is also very interesting is the idea of securities fraud. So this was something that like Elon Musk has been accused of committing several times. Like his Twitter account is the worst fucking thing in the world from a like business management perspective, because this thing, this quote that or this tweet he posted, am considering taking Tesla private at $420 per share, funding secured. That's a huge thing, because that right there, you can't just announce on Twitter. Okay, there are specific rules against that, because effectively what that boils down to is by taking a business private, he like has privileged information. He can profit off of this. So like he effectively manipulated his stock price. Okay. And I believe the FTC like fined him like a couple $1 million for it. Okay. Like Martha Stewart went to jail for a year because somebody told her that a company was getting some bad news. So she sold her shares and saved $50,000 or so, but then went to prison for a year. Okay. Like this is a pretty important thing, because if you know something that's not public information, it is not fair, right? So the reason why insider trading is considered illegal is because it is not fair to anyone else who's an investor. Like, you know that a company is getting hit with a major lawsuit. It's not fair that you were able to sell your shares before that information was public. Make sense? All right, we'll try to think of what else we have. Organized crime. Again, this is very important, but we're effectively out of time. So anyone have any questions?
Your study guides, you don't have like, you have it like exam 1 and exam 2 is what I'm assuming this exam.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, those study guides are out of date. Since we're doing 2 exams rather than 3, I've got to go through and figure out what's on exam 2 that's actually going to be on the midterm. So I will email everyone a study guide by Friday explaining exactly what is on the exam. Okay, so everything that's on the exam 1 study guide is like relevant for the exam. We're going to talk about it. But I got to go through the exam 2 study guide and pull everything that needs to be taken off. Okay. So I will correct that and get it posted by Friday. I will also post your guys's extra credit link. If you have registered to vote, like I highly encourage you to check Blackboard to make sure that I've uploaded it. If I haven't, just shoot me an email saying, hey, I'm missing this, jackass. Like you can literally say it like that, because that means I forgot and I should go give you your credit because you did the thing. So, cool.
Why are you sitting in Zoom next Wednesday? Just sitting here watching videos? Is that supposed to be like the review day, or what is that?
Yeah, that's the review day.
Okay.
Okay. So Monday, like again, it'll be an optional thing, but I'll be in class and we'll finish out the rest of the week 7 stuff, just so that, or I'm sorry, the week 6 material. But since it's the exam week, like, or the midterm week, I don't want you guys to have to feel like you have to come to class if you don't want to.
Okay.
Everything, like, you'll have the study guide by then, so you'll know, like, if you need me to go through specific stuff in Vice or organized crime, we definitely can. But if you don't feel like you need to, then you don't need to come.
Sounds good.
Make sense? Anyone got anything?
Can I ask you about my court case real quick?
Sure.
I just wanted to see what you.
You're muted again.
Looking at Kentucky versus King, instead of the Louisiana versus what was that one I sent you? Kennedy versus Louisiana.
Okay, remind me what that was over.
That was over whether that pretty much said the death penalty can no longer be used for
Yeah.
offenses that don't take a lot. And then the other one was the Kentucky versus King is about you don't need a warrant if it's an emergency, because they were flushing a weed down the toilet to destroy the evidence, and they broke in, and then it just it changed how the Fourth Amendment works.
Yeah, I think that's extremely relevant. When did that come down?
2011.
Perfect. Yeah, that's
Okay,
fine.
but yeah, no, I just didn't know, because I feel like the Kennedy versus Louisiana is going to have a lot of because that one's very opinionated, so I feel like I could have got a lot of information, but I felt like the other one might be able to do better for.
Yeah, I mean, whatever, as long as it came about from the Roberts Court and is somehow, form or fashion, related to criminal law or criminal procedure, you're square.
Okay.
Okay.
I was gonna say, I feel like that one works better because that deals with criminal procedure. So
Yeah.
instead of the other one. So, all right. Thanks.
All right. Anyone else got anything? All right. Well, have a good day.
Yep. See you in
Hopefully,
like 6 months.
Hopefully Rarick is open Monday.
See ya.
See ya.